The rain had been relentless that night, slashing against the windows of the extravagant city lounge, where laughter and the clinking of expensive glasses echoed off the marble walls. Inside, warmth and opulence wrapped around the wealthy patrons like an unspoken privilege, their designer suits and glittering jewelry whispering of excess. And yet, amidst the intoxicating scent of aged whiskey and imported cigars, there was an intrusion, a man who did not belong. He stood near the entrance, his presence barely acknowledged at first, a shadow against the gleaming surfaces. His clothes were worn, his coat frayed at the edges, his hair damp from the storm outside. The conversation near the bar faltered when they noticed him, a cluster of young socialites exchanging glances, their amusement barely concealed. A woman with striking red lips tilted her head, her voice a careful balance of mockery and curiosity. "Lost your way, sir?" she mused, swirling the amber liquid in her glass. The others smirked, their eyes sharp, dissecting him with an arrogance they didn't bother to hide. The man didn't answer right away. He lifted his gaze slowly, taking them in polished, privileged, utterly unaware of the world beyond their crystal glasses. His fingers brushed the edge of a sleek table, as if testing its reality. And then he smiled. Not the kind of smile one gives when cornered, nor the forced submission of a beggar, but something else, something unreadable. "I'm exactly where I need to be," he said finally, his voice calm, measured. The way he spoke unsettled them. He was too composed, too assured for someone in tattered clothing standing in a room full of those who had never known hunger, never felt the bite of cold against their bones. The tallest among them, a man with slicked back hair and an expensive watch that caught the dim lighting just so, scoffed and leaned forward, placing a hand against the bar, as though claiming the space between them. "You know, places like this don't cater to charity cases," he said, earning a round of soft laughter. "Unless, of course, you're here to clean up after us." More laughter. The group found this endlessly amusing, entertained by their own cruelty. But the man, the supposed outsider, remained undeterred. He looked at them one by one, as though memorizing their faces, drinking in their condescension like a slow, deliberate indulgence. And then he reached into his pocket. The laughter quieted. A crisp black card slid onto the bar, its minimalist design betraying nothing but an unmistakable weight, one that only those familiar with power and exclusivity could recognize. The bartender, who had remained impassive until now, straightened at the sight of it. The shift was small, barely perceptible, but enough to send a ripple through the room. The socialites exchanged looks. The smug confidence that had radiated from them mere moments ago wavered, the air suddenly thick with something unspoken. The bartender cleared his throat and inclined his head. "Welcome back, sir." The group stiffened. "Back?" The words seemed to hang in the air, unraveling their assumption that he was nothing more than an unfortunate who had wandered where he shouldn't. The slick-haired man's smirk faltered as he took a step back, his hand tightening around his drink. The red-lipped woman, who had been the first to speak, narrowed her eyes, her amusement replaced with something akin to unease. Who she started, but the words never fully formed. The man tilted his head slightly, considering them as if deciding how much to say. Then, as if he'd already made up his mind, he reached for his glass one that had been waiting for him, prepared before he even walked in. He lifted it, taking a slow sip before setting it down, the faintest smile playing at the corners of his lips. "I wonder," he mused, his voice just above a whisper, "how much you'd be laughing if you knew what I know." The room was silent now. Outside, the rain continued its relentless assault on the city, but inside, the storm had just begun. Because what none of them knew, what not a single soul in that room could have predicted, was that years ago, this man had been nothing. Less than nothing. He had walked these same streets with empty pockets and aching hunger, ignored by the very people who now stared at him with dawning realization. But fate had a cruel sense of humor, and the world had turned in his favor in ways they could never comprehend. He was no longer the man they assumed him to be, and soon enough, they would understand just how wrong they were.